Now, he's Al Jazeera's senior political analyst, joins us from Doha. So, Marwan, an Israeli airstrike killing at this stage at least 6 people in Jenin in the occupied West Bank. As Hamda said there so eloquently, this is a silent war alongside Gaza, one that doesn't get as much attention. That's correct, isn't it?
It is, and in so many ways, it's one and the same, not only because both are Palestinian, because both have been under occupation for 6 decades, but also because the like of Janine and much of Gaza, notably, say, Jabalia, right? The Jabalia refugee camp, like the Jenin refugee camp, are refugee camps. These are places where refugees, Palestinian refugees from areas within Israel itself, those who were kicked out of their own homeland, have been living generation after generation in a camp around Jenin in the northern part of the West Bank, just like they do in Jabalia in the northern part of Gaza. And these refugee camps have become symbol of steadfastness, of Palestinian steadfastness against occupation and dispossession. Some of those dozens of fighters in the Jenin refugee camps today are the sons and the grandsons of martyrs from Jenin, like the same thing again in Gaza. More than 3/4 of the population of Gaza, almost 80% of the population of Gaza, are refugees. Most of the population of Jenin refugee camps are refugees. So they're not only refugees, they also live under occupation and they live under continued Israeli assault. They are at the receiving end of Israeli sadism, fascism, colonialism, and certainly bombings and killings.
OK, Marwan, many thanks indeed. We're going to speak to you again in just a few moments on developments in Gaza. But for now, thanks very much. Let's bring back Marwan now. He's Al Jazeera's senior political analyst. Let's start with the ceasefire deal and where we are at, Marwan. I mean, it does seem that we've reached a point where it's the small details, the technical details perhaps, being hashed out. What might they be?
It seems to me that Netanyahu, the way he's formulating it, in the sense that we are waiting for Hamas to respond, it's because he continues to add last-minute or not so last-minute conditions to his already complicated set of conditions. And I think one of the most important ones is that he wants to maintain a security zone, as he would like to call it, in the eastern part of Gaza that goes something almost a kilometer wide and some 15 kilometers long. I think it's something that the Palestinians are against. In fact, for long, the Biden administration itself was against and called it a red line, in the sense that there would be, in the future, no Israeli annexation, no Israeli occupation, and no Israeli confiscation of land from Gaza. But Netanyahu continuously tries to add new attempts at maintaining Israeli presence either in the southern part of Gaza or in the eastern part of Gaza. He's also making some new conditions about the nature of the force that will implement the ceasefire in the middle of Gaza, checking the people who will be moving from the south to the north, and any such issues. God knows what else has been added to it, but it's certainly a very complicated deal. Signing it apparently is going to prove to be the easy part. Implementing it is going to be quite challenging. And
any leaks that we have been getting, Marwan, in the last couple of days have largely been about the first phase, talk of a 42-day ceasefire, the release of 33 captives, not much on what a second phase would look like. And of course, that would hopefully involve a permanent ceasefire and the release of all the remaining captives. How difficult do you think it's going to be to move from the first phase to the second?
Well, first of all, it's supposed to be discussed in the middle of the first phase anyway. And second of all, I think the key word, the one you just uttered, Laura, which is hopefully. deals are not built on hopes. But in this case of Israel, it is. Believe it or not, there is no end game here. It's supposed to be a permanent ceasefire. But Netanyahu continues to say, no, there's going to be no permanent ceasefire. We're going to go back to war as we deem it necessary. It was the same thing. Any student of Israeli politics and diplomacy knows that we have been living 30 years of the so-called Oslo process and continue to until this day. It was a long set of agreements to be implemented in stages, and within the stages there are phases, and each phase will be dependent on the preceding stage, and so on and so forth. And Israel plays the judge, and then it violates at will because it says the Palestinians are violating, and in the meanwhile goes on to annex and goes on to settle and goes on to occupy and kill and slaughter and so on and so forth. So I think we might be living another such deal where Israel would simply use the first phase in order to get away with whatever it could get away with. That is a possibility. There's a room for skepticism. And yet, I would say, why would Trump push for a deal now in order for Israel to walk away from it right at the outset of his administration? So I think Trump is pushing for this thing because he really doesn't want more and more people to be killed on TV screens in America as he takes over, because he wants to take care of these other issues, presumably China and Russia and I don't know, Greenland and the Panama Canal or whatever it is, Mexico, Canada. But I think he does want to turn the page on Gaza now. It might be not what Netanyahu wants to do, but certainly also the Israeli public might want to move away from that. Look at what happened in Lebanon. We're almost now 2 months into the ceasefire in Lebanon. The Israelis seems to be happy now. They weren't happy in the beginning, but they seem to be happy now with the idea that the ceasefire. And then there is the rest of us, Laura. You, myself, our viewers, and the rest of the world. They are fed up with Israel and its slaughter and its genocide. Everyone is fed up with Israel, even its allies. Even listening to its most endearing ally, Blinken, it seems even he, its main supporter, is frustrated with this fascist Israeli government because just everyone is fed up. It's time to turn the page on the genocide.
Yeah, I did get a sense of that in Blinken's foreign policy speech. Marwan, many thanks indeed for joining us there.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.